It's Ray from Euro Football Star. We're coming live from Taksim Square in Istanbul. The weather is beautiful today. We've got lots of sunshine. It's nice and warm. We're very excited. We've got a special guest joining us live today, all the way from the UK. Now, I'm going to introduce you to Ady Brawn. Good afternoon, or yes, good afternoon, actually. Ady, how are you?
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm not bad, Ray. How are you?
Very well, mate. Sorry, I'm just getting mixed up with all the different time zones at the moment. I'm trying to work out who's where. We've done a few interviews back to Australia this morning. So just for our listeners, just to explain a little bit about Ady. So Ady is someone who I worked with quite a few years ago now, back in the UK. We originally first met in Leicester City and Northampton Town. Ady was working with the Leicester City women's team. And just a little bit about Ady's background. He's also a teacher. He's also studies in sports psychology, and he's more recently been working at Northampton Town under 18. So his wealth of knowledge in the world game of football is second to none. A very highly qualified and skilled man, and I've been very fortunate to know Ady for probably over 15 years now. So how's things going from your end, Ady? Have you been keeping busy the past 12 months or so?
Yeah, it's been really busy. I mean, it's sort of end of season now, so it's sort of quiet down a little bit. Most of my stuff sort of now online at the moment, sort of over Zoom and stuff. But yeah, sort of ticking over, but ready to get the season started again.
That's amazing, mate. That's amazing. Now, just for all of our listeners back in Australia, we've got about 5,000 players that we work with nationally from all the major cities in Australia. We've had a few different questions pinged in for you. So you okay if I shoot the questions and see if we can get them answered for the listeners?
Yeah, it's fine.
Just talking and thinking back to your teaching background, how have you found that linked into football and in regards to your coaching? And do you think it was an advantage having a bit of a teaching background as well? And do you think it benefited in any way?
Yeah, I think it sort of benefited sort of myself and also my delivery in very much understanding sort of your ABCs and the basics you need to then progress to obviously moving on to that sort of elite level, and going sort of further afield within, not just in football, but in other sports. So, picking them up and obviously teaching them has sort of helped them progress me as sort of as a coach and a teacher.
Yeah, it's amazing. I know when we first met, we went back and we were working at Leicester City together, and I remember the changes that went through in the Premier League with the EPPP and categorising all of the academies. And I think that was one of the big things that was taken out of teaching, was designing those individual objectives for players and giving them individual objectives in training and game days. And I think that's been one of the highlights of getting teaching involved into the process of coaching.
Yeah.
Now, one of the other questions we've got as well, obviously, we've got a little bit of a sports psychology background for you, and you're still going along your journey with that. Do you feel like that's benefit, and it does benefit in any way being a coach, being able to bring that into the game?
Oh, hugely. It's becoming sort of more prevalent in the game. And, from sort of beginning my coaching journey to sort of, doing more coaching sort of badges and sort of CPD and stuff, there's a lot sort of the mental side of the game now involved in it. So it's getting coaches to think about it. But I mean, the sports psychology side for me, it hooked me into sort of where I wanted to go sort of next in my career, and sort of being a sport and exercise psychologist. And I think it's, has a huge input within the game. Players, could be brilliant, but what could then be in that place is sort of, have they got the right mindset as well to go along with that sort of technical side and tactical side of their game. And working with sort of the teams I've worked with the last season just gone, hopefully I've had a positive input in their journey and in their progression that they have.
That's amazing, mate. And actually our next question, it actually follows on from that psychology question, and it's all around mindset, and you just spoke of that. One of the questions we've had in for you was asking around mindset. Is there like one tip or one little bit of advice you can give to a young up and coming player, whether it be a girl or a boy, that they could maybe take into the game?
I'd say have that growth mindset. Don't see feedback as a form of criticism. see it in a positive light of how you can become a better player. You know, whether, you know, from its coaches, parents, peers, you know, internally as well. It's, you know, don't see it as a negative thing or a bad thing. You know, it's something that treat as a positive manner. Okay, right. So how am I going to get better at that? What am I going to do to be good at that, or to go and perform better there?
Yeah, that's amazing, mate. That's really good. And on our next question, which follows on a little bit again from that, these all rolling really nicely, actually. But one of the questions we've had sent in was, what are the 2 or 3 key areas do you believe to make it as a football?
I think there's got to be that. There's got to be, you know, there's got to be a technical ability. You know, having that sort of technical ability. I think it's a strong area as well is not dwelling on sort of mistakes. You know, everybody makes mistakes in life, not just in sport, but just in life in general. And it's not sort of dwelling on them and thinking about them. It's about being in the present and being in the moment, focusing on that task in hand. So I think that mindset's really important to sort of help, you know, those players. And I think that's one of them difference makers for, you know, how come certain players might make it compared to others. Is that mindset as well. I think that's sort of really important. So I'd say technical ability, mindset, and that willingness to work hard and graft for it. And, you know, there's many routes now sort of getting into, you know, the elite side of the game. You know, it's not just going through an academy sort of all your life. You can, you know, start off in the lower leagues and build up. You know, there's more players now coming through that way, as well as sort of coming through academies. So, you know, it's, if you don't succeed that first time, if it's still a dream, don't give up, keep going. You know, there's other ways of getting to the route you want to get to.
That's amazing, mate. I mean, obviously my background being in Australia on and off for the last 16 years, it's a couple of the key areas you mentioned, areas that players, we've noticed as a company that players struggle with, their technical ability. They don't focus enough in the younger age groups on ball manipulation and that repetition. And the next one that you hit on again was one that we're really struggling with in Australia, believe it or not, is that mindset and that ability to go above and beyond. And one of the big problems that we have is that we've got a lot of success stories through our academy, sending them to Europe and getting pro scholarships. But the real reason is that those boys and girls are the ones who've been willing to go out and do 5-6 sessions a week, playing 2 matches. And then we get, unfortunately, you get a lot of players and a lot of families think you can do it just by turning up for 2 sessions a week. And we tell them there's no magic recipe to becoming a footballer. It's literally hard work, mindset, repetition, and also installing that technical ability. Now, just following on from that one, Ady, obviously we did have a link and a connection with Leicester City Women's, and we coached together. And just on the women's game, I was back in the UK in September last year. We went to see Liverpool v Everton at Anfield in front of 50,000 fans, which was just phenomenal. It blew me away at how big the game's got in the UK. And one of the questions that we got was, why do you believe the WSL, the Women's Super League, all of a sudden is probably the world leader in women's football, and why England got so successful in regards to the women's academies and the women's first teams?
I think there's a couple of reasons, I'd say. Obviously, there's more investment, you know, from whether that through sponsorship or through sort of the FA or local FAs. There's a lot more coaching availability now to sort of women's and girls football at all levels of the game. You know, they've started like a Wildcats at a very young age. You know, there's that access now, you know, whereas before, say 10 years ago, there wasn't that access for girls to continue football going into sort of middle school, secondary school, but now there's that opportunity to. You know, a lot of clubs now, especially clubs that want to look at being sort of grassroots certified clubs, and with their local FAs, normally have to have a girls team involved. There's a lot more, I'd say, sort of RTCs or academies. I mean, it's changing for next season. So there's allowing for more, and it's giving the clubs responsibility as well into sort of putting money into the pot as such. for the women's game. Yeah, the opportunities have up the ante a bit, and I'd say that, you know, that sort of hold on, sorry, that's the dog.
That's okay. It's all good, mate. Keep going.
I'd say, yeah, it's sort of that opportunity to obviously play, and then to take it away from sort of a school setting into sort of clubs, grassroots. There's more sort of academies or development centres for girls, either with clubs or FAs, as well, county FAs as well. So the opportunities are there. I'd say then another thing is, you know, through, I think, the success that the women's team have had recently over the recent years, that's been a benefactor as well. Yeah, I'd say there's loads of different reasons to why, but it's fantastic to see the crowds they're getting now in the WSL.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I was blown away. I went and visited Liverpool's girls' academy down in Skelmersdale as well. And even, you know, I think back to when we were involved with the girls' academy and the women's team at Leicester, and just the level of the players, like the girls blew me away. The level and how high they were, and the standard of football just was amazing. And I think that's one of the things that I've noticed in Australia. We tend to do really well with the women's game, and the Matildas are normally very, very strong. There's a lot of Matildas playing back in Europe, but I think we're starting to drop behind a little bit again with that investment and involvement. And yeah, it's probably some key lessons learned. Now that's amazing, Ady. The next question we got, and this is a really interesting one. We had a question in from some of our Italian community. I heard a point on TalkSport last week on BBC, and it was really interesting. And they were talking about the fact that there's 3 Italian teams have made all of the European finals in Inter, Roma, and Fiorentina. And the question that we got asked is this like the second coming of the Serie A, with the Italian football getting stronger again? Or is it because Italy didn't make the World Cup and those players have had a lot more rest and had downtime during the World Cup? What's your belief and background in the Italian teams all of a sudden making all 3 European finals?
I mean, I think I listened to that with Ali McCoist.
That was it.
Saying about it. Yeah, in the morning. And you know, it's great to see. You know, you want as many top leagues as you can and sort of there, but I think you know, without sort of being there, I couldn't definitely say. But again, I think there's sort of a lot more possibly investment within the clubs themselves. You know, there's, you know, a lot more players wanting to go and play there. You know, whether it's got that sort of stereotyping in a way of, you know, you can go there, sort of play your latter years of the career, and it can extend your career for going to play there because it's a different style of game. You know, I think maybe that's sort of gone now. You know, a lot of youngsters are sort of going there as well. I think their academies are bringing through a lot of young players that they're using, because obviously money's not as sort of fluent as it is in the English Premier League, you know, where you can throw like 100 million at a player and it's not a bad thing, you know. Whereas I think it's a lot sort of purse strings there. So they're investing in sort of their youth players to bring through, and using that money then sort of obviously help the club. Yeah, it's great to see. I loved watching the old Italian football on Channel 4 when I was a kid. So hopefully that comes back.
Yeah, I used to love that. Was it Scorio on Channel 4?
Good. Yeah, it was wicked.
It was good. And look, I actually heard that talk on TalkSport with Ali McCoist, and I thought when that was put across in the 2 arguments, I've got a very good Italian friend in Jamie Laurenti back in Brisbane, and my thoughts on it were, it was a couple of reasons. One, I think the World Cup did have a knock-on effect, and 2, I think that I just think it was a lot of the draws I noticed. I don't know if it was done on purpose, but a lot of the draws in Europe, the Italians were all put down one side of the draw. I think we had Real Madrid, Chelsea, Liverpool, Bayern Munich, and Man City all in one side of the draw, and then on the other side we had all 3 Italian teams. So maybe they did just get a little bit lucky, but I did predict that no Italian team's going to win a European trophy, and so far I'm right, because Roma lost. I don't think Inter Milan are going to beat Man City, and I even believe West Ham are going to beat Fiorentina, but we will see. Now, big game on Saturday. Are you going to be tuning in and watching the Champions League final, or are you going to be going out to watch a Disney movie?
I'm definitely going to be watching the Champions League final. Love to see Man City do the treble. I mean, I don't mind who wins.
Yeah.
But it'd be amazing if they did it.
Yeah, I said the same, actually, even though being a huge Liverpool fan, but I am rooting for Man City on Saturday. It's going to be an amazing achievement to win a treble. Not many teams have done it. And I think, to be honest, they've definitely been the best team on the planet. And this is the best chance I think they're going to get to win it. So from you, mate, can I get a match prediction with a score?
3-1 Man City.
3-1 Man City. One thing I want to ask you on the game, who's going to get the first goal? Which player?
I reckon it's for the form. I think it's going to be Gundogan.
Gundogan, yeah, it could be a good choice. And the next question on that will be on the Champions League final. Where do you think the game is going to be won and lost? Is it going to be in defence, in the middle of the park, or up top?
Well, I'd say it possibly in that middle. I mean, look at it, Man City. Defensively, John Stones has somehow turned it around again. I mean, what Pep must do with him is immense, because he's turned it around again, and he's looked quality at the back. Kyle Walker, you wouldn't believe, his age, and is towards that sort of end, coming down that peak now, and towards the end of his career. But from these performances and just from his stamina, you just wouldn't think it. But I think it's going to be in that middle. I think.
I agree. I think John Stones has been a phenomenal move, the way he sort of integrated them into that midfield, and also Kevin De Bruyne, for me, in my opinion, has got to be the Ballon d'Or this year. I just think he should have won it so many years in a row, and I think it's going to be a phenomenal thing. Now, Ady, just for you, just one final question before we finish. What's your plans for the future, mate, and what are you going to try and do in football, and what's your next steps?
Well, I'm currently a sport and exercise psychologist in training. That's a 3-year journey. I'm a year and a half in, so I've got another year and a half left. When I finish that, I can then register with the HPC over here to become a recognised sort of sport and exercise psychologist. Plan is to continue what I'm doing, working with clubs. So the last year I did sort of a lot of voluntary work with several different clubs. Then looking at sort of getting more full-time work and sort of paid work within the area. Trying to stick in football for now, because it's sort of my background, but I would like to venture sort of into the psychological side of other sports, and sort of working in other sports and other areas.
Amazing, mate. And one final thing, if you ever fancy a trip out to Australia, mate, you let me know. We've got some really good players over there. I think they'd benefit from having you out for a week or two. So if you're keen to come and join us, mate, in the next 12 months, I'd love to bring it over for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, that sounds great.
That'd be amazing, mate. Well, thank you very much, Ady Brawn, for joining us, and all our listeners are going to love watching this one back. So a big thank you to Ady, and a big thank you to all our followers and listening and tuning in today. We're going to be back with more updates from the Champions League final. We've got a lot of things going on the next few days. As you can see behind me, we're getting set up in Taxham Square. There's Champions League banners and activities being set up all across the city. And we're going to be coming live from Taxham Square on Thursday with 2 ex-Champions League players. Not as big as Ady Brawn, but near enough there. Big thank you to all of our listeners, and we'll be in touch very soon. Thank you, guys.